Let me ask you something uncomfortable. Are you a good person? Or are you just someone who has never been genuinely tested? Because there is a difference, a significant one. And most people spend their entire lives never making that distinction, never having to really, because the circumstances that would force the question never quite arrive. Most people confuse being a nice guy with being a virtuous man. And Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most brutally honest thinkers in the history of Western philosophy, had something very specific and very uncomfortable to say about that confusion. He said, "True morality does not live in the person who cannot bite. It lives in the one who has teeth, real capability, real power, and keeps them sheathed anyway." That idea is going to challenge something in you today. Maybe something you have been quietly proud of for a long time. That is intentional. That is the point. Stay with it. Before we get into Nietzsche, a quick word about why this conversation matters specifically right now. We are living in a moment where harmlessness has become almost synonymous with goodness, where the person who avoids conflict is automatically assumed to be the morally superior one, where being unoffensive in speech, in behavior, in ambition, has somehow become the baseline definition of being a decent human being. And I understand why that happened. The cultural logic makes a kind of surface sense. People who cause less harm seem better than people who cause more of it. But Nietzsche would look at that reasoning and say, "You are confusing the result with the cause. You are seeing someone who does not harm others and assuming it is because they have made a choice." When often, and this is the uncomfortable part, it is simply because they do not have the option. A dog that does not bite because it is on a leash is not a gentle dog. It is a leashed one. And calling that gentleness is a mistake with consequences. Harmlessness is not the same as holiness. Here is a pattern I want you to think about. Take someone who has never started a fight in their life, never raised their voice in anger, never manipulated anyone, never exercised power over another person in any obvious way. We look at that person and we think, good person. We assume the absence of harmful action is evidence of good character. But Nietzsche asks a different question. He asks, is this person peaceful because they have chosen peace from a position of genuine strength, or because they have simply never encountered a moment that required them to be anything else? There is a version of niceness that is a genuine character achievement. A person who genuinely could make things difficult, who has the intelligence, the will, the resources to impose their preferences on the world, but consistently chooses not to. That restraint is real. That is something earned. And then there is another version, the person who is nice because the world has never pushed them hard enough to find out what is underneath the niceness, who has never been in a position where something they deeply valued was genuinely threatened, who calls their avoidance of difficulty a virtue, because the alternative is admitting it might be fear. The lion that has eaten has no need to prove its strength, but the mouse that avoids the cat and calls it courage, that is a different thing entirely. Nietzsche is not saying be cruel. He is not saying go out and hurt people to prove you can. He is asking something far more personal than that. He is asking, do you actually know which one you are? When the powerless rewrite the rules. This is where Nietzsche gets specific, and where his thinking gets genuinely difficult to sit with. He introduced a concept he called slave morality, And before I explain it, I want to say clearly that this is a philosophical framework, not a judgment about any individual. Nietzsche himself was relentlessly self-critical. He applied this lens to himself as much as to anyone else. Here is the idea. At some point in history, Nietzsche traced it particularly to certain religious and social movements. The values of the weak became the dominant moral code. And the way that happened was through a specific psychological sleight of hand. The people who lacked power could not beat the powerful on their terms. So they changed the terms. They took the things they could not do or could not have: strength, confidence, ambition, the willingness to impose themselves on the world. And they reframed all of those things as vices. And simultaneously, they took their own limitations: passivity, obedience, humility, the inability to act, and rebranded them as virtues. Pride became arrogance. Confidence became vanity. Strength became aggression. The person who shaped the world became the villain, and the person who suffered it became the saint. The slave revolt in morality begins when resentment itself becomes creative and gives birth to values. That is Nietzsche directly, and what he is pointing at is something quite specific. The moral inversion, where weakness becomes virtue, did not arise from genuine goodness. It arose from resentment, from a deep, often unconscious bitterness toward those who had what the resentful lacked. And the reason this matters for your life, right now, practically, is this. If you have internalized a moral code that was built by people trying to make their weakness feel noble, you might be calling your avoidance of discomfort a virtue. You might be calling your fear of confrontation peaceful. You might be calling your unwillingness to compete humble. And none of that examination is comfortable. But Nietzsche would say, good. The discomfort is where the real work starts. The tame man versus the virtuous man. Let me bring this into the present, because this is not an ancient philosophical debate. It is playing out in front of us every single day. We live in a culture that has, in many ways, made victimhood a form of social currency, where the person who can most convincingly demonstrate that they have been harmed occupies a position of moral authority, where the display of weakness, framed as vulnerability, is rewarded with attention, sympathy, and influence. Nietzsche would recognize this immediately. He would call it the same pattern wearing different clothes. And here is the distinction he would insist on, the distinction between the tame man and the virtuous man. The tame man is harmless because he fears conflict, because the cost of engagement feels too high, because he has learned that staying small is safer than being seen. He is not choosing peace, he is choosing avoidance, and he has been so thoroughly conditioned to call that avoidance a virtue that he genuinely cannot feel the difference anymore. The virtuous man is something else. He is not tame. He carries within him the full capacity for intensity, for anger, for force, for decisive action. He knows his own weight. He has met his own darkness and has not looked away from it. And from that place, from that genuine awareness of his own capacity, he chooses restraint. Not because he cannot act, because he has decided with full understanding of the alternative not to. That is virtue, not the absence of teeth. The deliberate decision not to use them. You cannot have genuine compassion if you have never had the option to be cruel. You cannot have genuine restraint if you have never had anything to restrain. The morality of the powerless is not morality at all. It is simply a description of their circumstances. You need something to restrain before restraint means anything. This is the part of Nietzsche's thinking that most people either miss or deliberately avoid, because it demands something of you that is genuinely difficult. He is not just critiquing weakness. He is making a claim about what real virtue requires as a prerequisite, and that prerequisite is capability. Real morality, the kind worth having, the kind that is actually a character achievement, can only exist in a person who has something to offer and something to withhold, who has built enough competence, enough presence, enough genuine personal power that their choice to be kind, to be measured, to be generous is an actual choice. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power is widely misunderstood here. People hear power and they immediately think domination, control over others, the strong taking from the weak. That is not what he meant. What he meant is closer to this: the drive to become more fully what you are, to develop your capacities, to overcome your own resistances and limitations, to grow, not to diminish others, but to expand yourself. The person who has genuinely developed themselves, who has built real skills, real resilience, real self-knowledge, and then chooses to use those capacities with care and intention. That is the person Nietzsche respects. That is what he means by the higher type. And the implication for your life is direct. If you want your goodness to mean something, if you want your kindness, your patience, your restraint to be genuine virtues rather than simply the absence of options, you have to first become someone who has real options. A man who gives from abundance is generous. A man who gives because he has nothing worth keeping is not generous. He is just empty. And calling that generosity is a confusion that costs him the self-knowledge he needs. What this actually looks like as a practice. So where does this land practically? Because if all we do is critique weakness without pointing towards something else, we have had an interesting intellectual exercise and nothing more. Here is what I think Nietzsche is actually asking of you, in 3 parts. The first is honesty about your own situation. Look at the areas of your life where you call yourself peaceful or humble or patient and ask honestly, is this a choice I am making from a place of genuine strength? Or is this a story I'm telling myself about a limitation I have not yet overcome? That distinction is not always comfortable to make. Make it anyway. The second is development. Genuine personal development. Not self-improvement as performance, not the curated image of growth, but the actual unglamorous work of becoming more capable, developing physical competence, intellectual depth, emotional regulation, financial resourcefulness, the ability to navigate difficulty without collapsing. These are not vanity projects. They are the prerequisites for genuine virtue. The third, and this is the one most people skip entirely, is integration of the shadow. Carl Jung called it that. Nietzsche had his own language for it, but the idea is the same. Every person carries within them a capacity for darkness, for anger, for cruelty, for selfishness, for force. Most people spend enormous energy pretending that capacity does not exist. They suppress it, deny it, call it unspiritual. Nietzsche says that is a mistake. The person who pretends to have no darkness is not more virtuous. They are simply less self-aware. And unexamined darkness does not disappear. It goes underground and comes out sideways in passive aggression, in moral superiority, in the quiet resentment that fuels slave morality in the first place. The dangerous saint Nietzsche's ideal is the person who has looked at their own darkness clearly, who has not flinched from what they are capable of, who has integrated that knowledge rather than suppressing it, and who, from that position of full self-knowledge, chooses to engage with the world with genuine care and genuine restraint. That person's goodness is not a limitation. It is a decision. And that is the only kind of goodness that actually holds under pressure. I want to say something direct before we close. Nietzsche is not easy. His ideas are regularly misused, taken out of context, weaponized by people who want philosophical justification for cruelty or selfishness. That is not what this is. And if anything you heard today made you think, great, so I have permission to be unkind, you have badly misread both Nietzsche and this video. What Nietzsche is actually asking for is harder than cruelty. He is asking for honesty, for the courage to look at yourself without the comfortable story, for the discipline to build something real, rather than call your avoidance of the work a form of wisdom. The dangerous saint is not the person who has given themselves permission to harm. It is the person who has done enough inner work to choose not to, from a position of genuine capability, genuine self-knowledge, and genuine care for the world around them. That is a much harder thing to become than either the person who causes harm or the person who quietly congratulates themselves for avoiding it. Nietzsche's harsh truth is simply this: virtue that costs you nothing is worth nothing. Goodness that requires no strength to maintain is not a moral achievement. It is a circumstantial one. And calling your limitations holy is one of the most seductive and most costly forms of self-deception available to a human being. The challenge he leaves us with is to stop hiding behind a mask of virtue and start doing the actual work of becoming someone for whom virtue is a genuine and tested choice. That work is not glamorous. It is not immediately rewarding. It requires you to sit with things about yourself you would rather not see. But it is the only path to the kind of character that actually holds, that is real when it matters, that is chosen rather than simply inherited by default. Mind Tactics Lab is here every week for exactly this kind of thinking. If the uncomfortable questions are what you are here for, subscribe. We have more of them coming. Which one are you right now? The tame man or the man with teeth who chooses not to use them? And if you're honest with yourself, which do you want to become? Leave it below. Think on it. The thinking is where it starts.